Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. This is the 30th part of What If Deku Had Psychokinesis. I hope you enjoy. Link to the original story and author in the description. Chapter 30, Lighting the Wick and Passing the Flame Part 2. So what would you say is your, biggest failing since you started your path to become a, hero Yaoyorozu? Momo blinked, startled from her meal. Looking up, she found Fat Gum watching her. The round hero was busy stuffing his face with his third whole pizza while she was busy cutting up her slice. She had been on patrol with the hero and his sidekick for the morning before he had told them it was time for brunch. Fat Gum, that's kind of rude, the soft-spoken sidekick, a third year from UA, Tamaki Amajiki said with a shake of his head. His voice was almost as shocking as the question Fat Gum had asked. He very rarely spoke and went out of his way to avoid Momo. At first she was worried, but Fat Gum has reassured her he was just shy. No, it's alright. It's a fair question. Putting her silverware down, Momo pondered the question asked of her. I think, she thought back to everything that she had been through since she came to UA and settled on a single, if painful, answer, my ability to execute an action quickly. Really? Momo nodded. There have been a few instances where this failing has come to haunt me. Fat Gum chomped into another pizza while motioning Momo to continue. The first was the villain attack while my class was at the USJ. Fat Gum paused and lowered his food. I read the report over that. Despicable that villains would attack you kids like that. But by all accounts, you kids handled yourselves just fine. You yourself took out a large group, didn't you? Your classmate you got separated with, Jairu. Yes. That's the one. Her statement pretty much said you saved her life. She had nothing but praise for you. Momo found herself fidgeting in her seat. She's very kind to say so. We've spent a lot of time together after that. She's become a very good and very dear friend, but I can't agree with her praise of me. Why? I assume you read how I took out so many villains. Correct? Fat Gum nodded. You and Miss Jairu combined your quirks to create a massive landslide. I'd say that was a very clever and quick course of action that saved your lives. And yet, it also put ours at unnecessary risk. If I hadn't been able to create a shelter for us, we could have just as easily been crushed to death. What's more, my decision also took us out of the fight. We were stuck in that shelter until the teachers and rescue crews pulled us out. It was Tamaki that spoke up next, though he didn't look at Momo when he did. You're thinking about if you might have helped protect that one kid that got hurt. Momo lowered her head. When I heard what had happened while we were trapped, when I saw them load Midoriya up. The timeline of events, it's probably true there was no way to reach the center of the USJ by the time everything happened. But it only became an impossibility once my plan took us out. In the end, I relied on luck. Nothing more. Fat Gum leaned back while Momo continued on. After that, my fight with Tokoyami comes to mind. A fight you won, spectacularly may I add. You seem to have zeroed in on a weakness and used it to your advantage. Yes, but only because I saw how his quirk reacted to harsh light as a fluke. Up until then, I doubted he had any weaknesses at all. If I hadn't seen that, I doubt I would have won our match since I wouldn't have had a plan. Luck wins once again. Momo took a sip of her drink, and then I ran into Todoroki. The only thing I could think to try was to hit him with my cannon. I couldn't think of anything else and I had time to try too. I relied on luck too much to get where I was and it finally ran out. Fat Gum opened another box of pizza as he spoke. It sounds like what you need is some old-fashioned ground experience. Bluntly, you have an incredible quirk and a mind that's as smart as a whip, but your plans lack experience to back them up. You have nothing to pull from and just go with the first thing that pops into your head. That can work and that can also lead to defeat. Fortunately, experience is going to build naturally. It's good to be concerned, but I don't think you need to be fretting about it too much. You only just started. If there was ever a time to learn, it's now. Momo looked up at Fat Gum. You think it's something so simple? With a giant smile, Fat Gum nodded. Yup. Going forward, we'll see if we can find you some work that you can use to get your boots wet. Nothing life-threatening, but it'll be good to get some dirt under those manicured nails. Momo bowed her head. Thank you so much, Fat Gum. Now. None of that. We three use food to power our quirks, so I say we fatties should stick together. Momo's smile cracked. Fat? While Momo looked down at herself despondent, Fat Gum blinked in utter confusion. Tamaki poked his side. I don't think you're supposed to call a woman fat. Oh. Fat Gum spent the next few minutes begging Momo for forgiveness. Please don't kill young Midoriya. All Might asked as he finished moving the furniture in the room off to the side. Gran Torino rolled his eyes as he waited in a chair. I'm just going to see what he can do. You also said you were just going to go wake him up. He's awake. Torino. When did you get this soft? If the kid's so fragile that he can't handle a little spar with an old man like me, then we have bigger issues that need to get addressed. The silent stare from All Might made Gran Torino sigh. What? It's not young Midoriya I'm worried about. Huh? All Might scratched his head. Let's just say there are people that might not be very happy if I bring young Midoriya home from a hospital bed. Gran Torino scoffed. What? Are you afraid of the boy's mother or something? I am terrified of her, yes. Before Gran Torino had a chance to ask what that was about, the sound of Izuku entering the room shifted their attention. All Might crossed his arms as he gave Izuku a look over. It looks like young Hatsum did a good job on your new costume. Izuku puffed up. Yeah, it's great. She was able to make everything I wanted. All Might nodded. The new costume, while keeping to the spirit of the first, had a more professional look. When his eyes looked over the white cape that now hung from Izuku's shoulders, he felt an old feeling of nostalgia take over. A cape, huh? Izuku nodded as he grabbed the hem of the cape and lifted it up. It was an idea I had just before internships. Do you not like it? Izuku had noted the subdued look on All Might's face. Even Gran Torino had the same look. All Might, however, waved off the concern. Nothing like that young Midoriya. It's a fine addition. It's just, seeing it reminded me of my old master. Oh? She wore a white cape as well. Izuku blinked, then looked down at the cape he held in his hand. I suppose once I inherit One for All, I'll be doing more than just carrying on your legacy, won't I? I'll be carrying hers too. All Might nodded, hers and everyone that came before. Izuku never really gave that much thought. He knew that One for All was a quirk that was passed from one person to another, but it was always All Might's quirk. But the reality was, it wasn't just his quirk. This was a quirk that belonged to 8 other people. 8 others who worked to help make One for All what was now. When Izuku thought of it like that, the idea of him carrying it next was daunting. Gran Torino sighed and hopped off his chair. We'll have plenty of time to talk about history later. Right now, with a sharp hiss of air, Gran Torino rocketed right by Izuku and perched himself on top of the pile of furniture. I want to see for myself what this little boy can do. Alright kid, Gran Torino took out a stopwatch and held it up for Izuku to see. I'm going to set this timer, and before it goes off, I want you to hit me once. Use your fists or chuck a chair at me. Doesn't matter which. Got it? Izuku glanced around at all the furniture again, then nodded that he understood. All Might sighed before he took several big steps back to make sure he gave the 2 plenty of room. Once he was far enough out of the way, All Might flashed Izuku a thumbs up and tried to look calm and confident. Good luck, young Midoriya. Am I about to die? Why does All Might look so freaking scared? Deciding that it might be a good idea to focus on the old man who had already kicked down his door this morning, Izuku's aura flashed on and he took up a fighting stance. Gran Torino blinked a few times at the twin bang silhouette Izuku's aura now created thanks to the crest attached to his forehead and groaned as he started the stopwatch and tossed it over to All Might. Kid, you're not even being subtle about being a fanboy. Are you? Izuku just grinned. Gran Torino's grip on the furniture tightened. Alright kid, let's see what you g-dash. The pile of furniture Gran Torino had been on suddenly flashed green before it rocketed upward. The old hero grunted before he kicked off and sailed to the other side of the room. As he flew through the air, pieces of furniture shot towards him, but by twisting and using his jet quirk, Gran Torino was able to dodge all of it before landing on top of a microwave and crushing it. You always start dirty, kid? Gran Torino asked, but with a smirk. Izuku pointed at Gran Torino. You literally started today by attacking me while I was asleep. Kicking off the broken microwave, Gran Torino bounced from wall to ceiling. As he moved around the room, Izuku struggled to keep up. He tried to keep the yellow blur in his sights so he could fire something at him to knock him out of the air, but at the speed he was moving that quickly became impossible. He's not just as fast as Ida, but he can change direction much quicker than OW. Izuku winced as Gran Torino zipped by and smacked him over the head. Hissing, Izuku changed tactics. The floating furniture began to move, twisting and turning in the air, filling the room with high-speed shields that Izuku hoped would slow the hero down and give him a chance to counterattack. To Izuku's immense shock, however, Gran Torino had no issue weaving his way through the floating clutter, and was even able to bound off some pieces too. Whack! Izuku hissed as Gran Torino shot by and smacked him across the head as he did. Come on, kid. How are you going to let an old man like me? Whack! Keep running circles around you. Whack! And beat you like a drum. Izuku stopped moving everything around and yanked everything towards him, putting a wall between himself and the yellow blur just before the old hero slammed into the makeshift wall he put up. The moment Gran Torino made contact, Izuku shoved outward and launched Gran Torino back. The latter tumbled through the air before he smirked and launched himself forward through the air. Hitting the wall again, he twisted himself upright and rocketed to the ceiling, then over Izuku. Izuku twisted his hands around, trying to keep his barrier between himself and Gran Torino, but he was too slow. By the time he had moved everything, Gran Torino shot by him, grabbed a strap to his harness and slammed Izuku to the ground and placed his foot on Izuku's head. I think that's my win, kid. Ow, Izuku groaned into the floor. You might be making the right moves, but your reaction time is horrible. Also, is throwing things lying around the only trick you got? Izuku twisted his head to the side, so that he could get a half-decent look at the hero. The smirk on his face was annoying. It's not over yet. Gran Torino's smirk got wider. Oh? Is that right, glowworm? Focusing on a pouch on his belt and letting his new cape hide what he was doing, Izuku used his quirk to pull out a small net. Yeah, the timer hasn't gone off yet. Yanking his cape to the side, Izuku threw the net over Gran Torino. The hero, however, shot back and jumped up to the ceiling, making the net miss. Before Izuku could make the net chase after him, Gran Torino slammed back down and landed right on Izuku's back. ACK. Izuku coughed and groaned, his green glow gone. Ow. Nice try, kid, but you're way too slow to try and pull a stunt like that on me. With Izuku still flat on the ground, Gran Torino kicked up his legs and took a seat on Izuku's back. At the very least, you don't fight exactly like your idol. You're able to use your head and do some thinking ahead. Hey! Gran Torino went on, completely ignoring All Might, and when you do decide to fight head-on like you did in the sports festival, you have the good sense to keep that aura of yours turned on. Why, yeah. I figured if I kept turning it on and off, people would know I was using my quirk on something. At least this way I keep them guessing. Gran Torino stroked his beard. Well, you're saying all the right things. Still haven't backed them up yet. Izuku glared up, face set and determined. I'm good to keep going. Ha! Ha! You don't lack spirit, at least. Hopping off and walking back until he was on the other side of the room, Gran Torino spread his arms out. Whenever you're ready, kid. Clock's still ticking. Izuku shot to his feet and tensed. Humph. With a sharp breath, his green aura flashed back to life. Staring down Gran Torino, Izuku quickly cast his eyes around the room and at all the scattered furniture. He noted he wasn't the only one doing this either. Gran Torino was also making sure he knew where everything was. He must be expecting me to try and hit him with something again. Alright, then let's change things up. Izuku launched himself forward, scrambling as he closed the distance. Gran Torino rolled his eyes with a smirk. Really? You want to try quirk? Gran Torino was cut off when his body glowed green and his arms were squeezed to his sides and his legs were slammed together, leaving him a short unmoving pillar. Gran Torino let off a few bursts of air, as he tried to propel himself up and break free of Izuku's hold, but he was held firm. Still running forward and fighting to keep his hold, Izuku yanked his left hand back, pulling Gran Torino towards him, while at the same time he twisted at the waist so that his momentum carried to his cocked back and right arm. Smash! Whoosh! The jets in Gran Torino's feet hissed loudly as a rocket of air launched him up into the air and ripped him free of Izuku's hold. Izuku gasped as his punch hit nothing but air. He had assumed he knew how strong the hero's quirk was. That it was just strong enough to help him bounce around at high speed. But this time he used so much power that Izuku immediately thought back to Tenya's recipro burst, or when Katsuki used his explosions to fly. Trying to hold someone that could put that much power into their movements was just not possible for him. At least it didn't hurt when he broke free. So the crest is working at least. Looking up, Izuku gulped when he saw the newly created crater in the ceiling that Gran Torino had made when he escaped. Izuku saw the crater but not Gran Torino himself. Crud, he already moved away. Before Izuku could start scanning the room, Gran Torino ricocheted into the back of his knees and kicked Izuku's legs out from under him before bouncing away. Gasping in shock, Izuku fell backwards. On instinct he reached out to the closest thing near him and yanked it over to him. With a oof, Izuku fell into the cushioned seat of a couch. He didn't allow himself time to recover though. He knew that the timer had to be getting close being done. A yellow blur off to his side warned him the Gran Torino was coming his way, so he launched the couch and himself up into the air with Gran Torino sailing right underneath. Righting himself, yanked up several large and flat pieces of furniture and leapt off the couch, hopping from platform to platform as he tried to chase after Gran Torino. Ha! At least you're not leaving yourself as a stationary target now. Izuku was in mid-jump when Gran Torino slammed into the table he was going to land on, splintering it and leaving nothing between Izuku and the floor. With the latter now hurtling down to the ground and defenseless, Gran Torino bounced off the floor and into a wall. Lining himself up to give Izuku a good kick in the chest. Better grit those teeth, kid. Izuku tensed, knowing what was coming. With nothing to stop him, he was a sitting duck in the air. He couldn't dodge or maneuver, and anything he could drag over wouldn't reach him in time. He was a sitting duck, and even if he landed on the ground, there was no way he'd have time to move out of the way. He was stuck with no way out. In theory. I hope I don't pants myself like last time. Izuku focused his quirk on himself. Focusing first on his boots and the space just past them, he pictured landing on an invisible platform and brought his fall to a sudden stop. It wasn't perfect. His balance was all over the place, and holding himself up even for this brief moment while not being under the effect of Ochako's quirk as he had been at the sports festival was weird and disorientating. But the brief moment was enough, as he immediately shifted his focus on his harness and the reinforced sections of his costume and pulled himself to the side, getting out of the way just as Gran Torino zipped by. All Might's eyebrows raised in surprise. Whoa. Clever kid. Gran Torino clicked his tongue as he passed by, not expecting that at all. Landing on a floating chair, Izuku grabbed as much furniture as he could and threw it all after Gran Torino, trying to capitalize on the moment. If I can get to him before he bounces off the wall, I'll have a chance. Ring. 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 Gran Torino hit the wall just as a wave of furniture was about to come crashing down on him, but the ringing of the stopwatch brought both to a stop. Izuku sighed and brought everything back down to the ground and collapsed into the chair he had been standing on. Darn it. I wasn't able to land a single hit. Don't be too hard on yourself. Izuku blinked and looked up as Gran Torino walked up to him. You kept adapting your strategies as the fight went on and were even able to create an opening for yourself in that last instant. It's been a while since I was taken off guard. Not bad. Young Midoriya, that move at the end. When did you come up with that idea? The sports festival? Izuku shook his head. That wasn't like when I was flying. Uraraka removed our gravity, so I was able to hold us both completely without any outside forces giving me issues. Without that I have to grab a person's clothing. I'm getting pretty good at that. I'll say, Torino mumbled to himself. remembering how he had to put in some effort to escape. I tried doing the same thing to myself once before, during the first day of school, but it didn't go very well. All Might recalled the disaster at the long jump and nodded sympathetically. Izuku continued on, but I never stopped thinking about the technique, and after the sports festival I started thinking about it even more. So when I was updating my costume I had some reinforced some parts so that if I tried, I had areas that I could hold better. All Might glanced over at Gran Torino, a smile on his face, not bad for a kid I'd say. Gran Torino just rolled his eyes, the day's still young, but it's off to a good start. Izuku blinked, wait? Did I just pass a test or something? Ha! Kid, I just said you were off to a good start. If you think I'm done with you then you got another thing coming. I got you for the whole day and you better believe I'm going to use every second of it. Izuku gulped, how did I get stuck with the hardest internship? Ochako sneezed as she lay face down on the floor, Miruko grinding her heel into the back of Ochako's neck. Hitoshi sneezed as he stared at Ms. Joke's training equipment he was supposed to use. A ventriloquist dummy. Tenya and Himiko both sneezed as they tried not to let Manuel see them blare daggers at each other. Shoo-yu-yu-tu-tu-wu. Shuto sneezed as his father tried to get his attention in the meeting with his sidekicks. Katsuki sneezed as Best Jeanist worked to comb through his hair and poured on an ungodly amount of hair gel. Yup, I drew the short straw for sure, Izuku sighed. It was the middle of the day and the street was busy with people strolling around. Normally in the quiet part of the city people never had to worry about crowd traffic. No one ever had a reason to stop in the middle of the sidewalk. That was until today. Under the shadow of an inconspicuous empty office building a huge crowd had gathered. Some whispering in awe or openly cheering. Their attention was drawn to a small group of 3 individuals. One an unassuming man in a business suit. Another, a student, several recognized from TV only a few days before, and the last and main focus of the crowd's attention, a hero who waved back at the crowd happily as the 3 entered the building and walked down a hallway. So is that kind of reaction normal to you? Asked the student. The hero shrugged, sorta. At least when I'm on the ground. Up in the air it's harder for the crowds to gather around me like that. It would have been better if we had taken a car. We could have avoided all the hassle getting here. Grumbled the businessman. People need to see their heroes on the streets. The man sighed while the hero shook his head, you're the one that insisted he had to be here. I could have easily taken care of this. The man gave the hero a pointed look, you've been taking care of this for over a week and haven't gotten anywhere. The hero laughed, what can I say? She's a character. Who needs to come to heal? The hero's smile frosted, though he kept it up, right? Good luck with that. Word of advice, don't let her hear you say that, actually don't let any other hero, especially ones on the billboard, hear you talk like that. The man stopped walking and looked at the hero, present company excluded, correct? The student looked between the 2 men. A little surprised to be seeing this kind of friction between professionals. Both men then seemed to remember they did have an audience and went back to their normal selves. So she's here now? You're sure? The man asked. The hero nodded, last time we talked she said this was where she was. And here I thought you said she was very adamant you stay away. That was only for our first 100 calls. I turned on the charm last time and got her to tell me. Aha! Maybe I also had someone trace her call when we last talked. The man sighed, even if this was where she was then, with how much she moves around, how do we know if she's here no dash? Crash! The wall behind the 3 exploded in drywall dust and cheap plaster as something rocketed through and slammed into the wall of the other side of the hallway. The 3 stared blankly as Ochako threw off the drywall chunks on top of her, picked herself up and launched herself through the hole she had just made. Get back here you bunny bitch. A couple seconds later, not even enough time for the 3 to even ask what had happened, and after a few nasty sounding thuds, Ochako came crashing through the same wall again but in a different spot and taking more of the wall with her this time. Chucking off the huge slab, she proceeded to once again launch herself through the hole, arhsh. More hollow thuds and whacks followed, and with the new holes, the three could hear voices. Faster. Matter. You want me, you better go for my throat. Get hurt, hurt them back. Get knocked down. Get back up. Crack. Crack. Crunch. Crash. The damaged wall exploded as Ochako went through it a third time. This time, however, she didn't hit the wall on the other side of the hallway as her flight was stopped while she was still in the air. It took Ochako's rattled brain a few seconds to realize that the impact wasn't coming and a few more seconds to realize she was floating in the air. Numbly, Ochako tapped her fingers together but stayed airborne. As the battle haze started to lift, she finally noticed that there were several large red feathers holding her up. Poking one and confirming Miruko hadn't broken her brain because yes, those were indeed real feathers, Ochako then looked over and realized she was not alone in the ruined remains of the hallway. First was a man she did not recognize. He looked simple enough in his plain black suit and held a black briefcase in his hand. He looked absolutely flabbergasted at what he was seeing. The next man she would know anywhere, thanks in part because her best friend was a walking talking hero encyclopedia. Hawks, the currently third-ranked hero in the nation, was standing in the middle of the hall and looking completely amused. When Ochako looked over at the third and final person, her train of thought was cut off when his shadow rose over her and looked down. I knew it. You are a closet psychopath. Dark Shadow. Fumikage called out in alarm, don't say things like that. Why? It was Midoriya that beat you up. Not her. We can totally take her. Boy, I can't wait till we tell the rest of the class that she's got a mouth like Bakugou's. Ochako blinked before she reached up and snagged Dark Shadow's beak, her eyes turning to slits as her combative aura started leaking out. What was that? You're not going to say a word? That's what you said, right? Eep. Before Ochako could carry out the untimely act of seeing if Peter Pan was right and a shadow could be ripped from a person, she was halted as Miruko stuck her head through the ruined wall and looked inside the hall. Where'd you go? Are you dead? I didn't kill you, did? She trailed off when she saw the group. Fuck you. Get out of my building. Hawks, ignoring that last bit, waved at Miruko with a smile. Yo, Miruko. How's it been? I see you got yourself an intern too. Gotta say, didn't see that one coming. You never struck me as the teaching type. Miruko blared at Hawks before turning back to Ochako. Get off your ass, and let's get back to work. Nodding, Ochako tried to roll off the feathers but gasped when they lifted her up and brought her over to the group. Hawks put a hand on her shoulder. Come on. It looks like you've been putting the poor kid through the ringer. Let her have a break and we can talk. We can take this chance to show the kids how professional heroes talk to each other. It'll be a great teaching moment. The businessman coughed into his hand and Hawks added as an afterthought, also, show her how important it is for active heroes in the Hero Commission to have an open dialogue with each other too. Ochako blinked in surprise and looked over at the man. The Hero Public Safety Commission? The man nodded. That's correct. It's good to see students such as yourself are familiar with us. Ochako didn't mention that she only knew about the name and that they were a thing that existed. Any other knowledge she might know was very vague and probably not very flattering. They were the bureaucracy behind the heroes is what she had heard. The man then turned his attention back towards Miruko. Hawks is right. If you have decided to take up the responsibility of acting as this young girl's tutor, then you should do so in all aspects of heroism. Not just combat. Miruko said nothing at first before rubbing the bridge of her nose. Neither of you are going to leave until we talk, are you? Nope, Hawk said while flashing her a cocky grin, so what say we get down to business? The exasperated sigh Miruko let out reminded Ochako of a teenager that was being forced to do some chores. Seeing the hero have to deal with it after getting her world stomped on for the past few hours brought a smile to Ochako's lips. A smile that was immediately noticed by the hero. Don't you go looking all happy. You better believe I'm gonna take all this shit I'm about to deal with out on you. Oh, well fuck. Pulling out a chair, Ochako took a seat next to Fumikage while Hawks, Miruko and the businessman took a seat at the only table they could find, or the only one Miruko could bother to pick up, that wasn't totally destroyed. The man had suggested that the two find another room to wait, but Miruko threw the whole teaching moment back into his face. Didn't you say something about how important it is for active heroes and the Hero Commission to have open dialogue with each other, and that the kids should see it? Before the man could argue, Hawks chimed in, if everything goes like you want, the kids will be involved anyway when they come with us. I'm not leaving Tokoyami behind and I doubt Miruko is going to leave her kid either. Seeing that there was no point fighting him, the man got down to business and put his briefcase on the table and popped open the locks. I'm going to assume that you already know what we are here to talk about, correct? Stain, was Miruko's immediate answer. Ochako went rigid at that name, the hero killer. What could they be talking about that has to deal with that monster? The man nodded, that's correct. Now, I think you'll agree that it would be better for everyone if this villain was caught and brought to justice. Which is why the commission is organizing a manhunt right now in Hosa City. We have several top heroes combing the streets and guarding all train stations and ways out of the city. We know he has to still be in the city, and now it's only a matter of time until we apprehend him. Yup, you sure got a bunch of people stumbling over each other trying to find this guy. Good for you. You've even got Endeavor to show up to walk the streets, right? The lack of enthusiasm from Miruko was a little startling for Ochako. Yup, he's going to be in the city tomorrow. He's been prepping his agency for when they take the field, Hawks replied. The man nodded, yes, we are fortunate to have so many heroes working together to bring this villain down. And here's the but, Miruko cut in. But we don't have many heroes who have quirks that specialize in tracking and manhunts. With an annoyed flick of her wrist, Miruko pointed at Hawks, who chuckled, I'm flattered, but while I'm good, covering a whole city is a tall order. Even for one as great as me. But if I had a partner. Say someone with a quirk that gave her really good hearing. And there it is. Miruko groaned. Miruko, the man said matter-of-factly, your rabbit quirk does more than just give you strong legs. It's well documented that your ears and nose make you an expert in tracking. Yup, I am. Which is why I plan on being in Hosa City to find that piece of shit. The man shook his head, that is not acceptable. Your talents will be better used working with Hawks to search the city. I believe I've made my opinion on hero teams abundantly clear. Heroes that have to team up are weak, and I'm not weak. And I already gave Hawks my answer the last time we talked. The man slapped his hand down on the table, need I remind you who you work for? This team up is not up for debate. You will do as you are ordered and dash. Crash. The table between the three exploded and was sent rocketing upward, creating a huge hole going up several floors. The man was left gaping in shock while Hawks whistled. Miruko, with her one leg still in the air, glared angrily at the man. Let's make one thing crystal clear. Clear. I don't work for you. Your job is to make sure pros are following the rules. Which I do. That is the extent of your power. You know it, and I know it. So don't think I'm some fresh rookie you can bully into being your group's attack dog. Am I clear? The man didn't, or couldn't, say anything, so Hawks took over. Look, I get that you have some pretty strong opinions on this subject, but I'd say this matter should be an exception. Don't you think? Before Miruko could give Hawks some choice words on the subject, Ochako stood up. Miruko. Miruko's ears twitched and she turned to look over at Ochako. Hawks also cast his eyes her way while the man from the commission was still frozen in terror. Stain, he hurt a friend of mine. Ochako's fists tightened as she spoke. Ida, his older brother, is Ingenium. He got attacked a few days ago. When I saw Ida afterwards, I could see how much pain he was in because of it. He didn't say anything, but I could tell. He was hurting so much. Miruko frowned. You're friends with that guy's brother, huh? Sorry to hear that you're having to deal with some of the fallout. I'm not interested in your fucking sympathy. Fumikage jumped hearing Ochako curse while Miruko raised an eyebrow. Hawks watched Ochako closely, not sure where this was going but having a feeling that he shouldn't say anything. What I'm interested in is why you're not doing your job. Kid, Miruko warned, but Ochako ignored her. You're a hero that has a quirk that can help stop this monster, and what? You're not going to use it because you like to work alone. That's total bullshit. If you and Hawks can get Stain caught quicker by working together, then there shouldn't be anything else coming out of your mouth, but yes. But you're not going to do it because you think it makes you weak? Ochako had started walking as she talked until she was now standing right in front of Miruko. You're afraid of Stain, aren't you? Miruko was out of her chair in a flash, putting herself face to face with Ochako. Care to repeat that? You're a coward. You don't want to be anywhere near Hosa City, so you're making up excuses to stay here. The two glared at each other, both with eyes filled with rage. Hawks could see Miruko's muscles straining and was starting to worry she was getting ready to attack. He also didn't like how Ochako was mirroring her perfectly, with her own muscles pulled taut. Is that a fact? Prove me wrong. There was a long horrible pause as everyone waited to see what the two did. Finally Miruko's sneer twisted upward into a terrifying grin. When'd you grow those balls, kid? They probably popped out after the 20th time you kicked me in the gut. Miruko laughed. Fine. Hawks, when do you want to do this fucking shit? Hawks blinked but decided to not let this opening slip by. Can you be at Hosa City tomorrow? Yup. Then tomorrow. Fine. Now get the hell out of here and take this commission douche with you. Me and the runt are gonna make up for all the time wasted tomorrow. You're going to bring her along then? You're taking your kid with you too, right? Yup. So I'm taking mine. With the meeting over, Hawks was able to get the man from the commission snapped back to reality and had Fumikage help him leave the building with Ochako showing them the way out. This left Hawks and Miruko alone. So you get what you want from that whole show and dance? Miruko glanced over at Hawks and rolled her eyes when she saw him grinning. Yeah. It's all good. Thanks for bringing that hero commission guy with you. I guess I owe you one. Hawks waved her off. Not a problem. Guess your kid knows that she doesn't have to let the commission push her around if she doesn't want them to. So that's a good lesson. But what about the other stuff? What, me pretending to turn down your offer to work together to take down Stain? Yeah. You're not worried she's going to think less of you for it? Miruko laughed. Uraraka did exactly what I wanted her to do. And after I tell her what we just cooked up, I doubt it'll be an issue. To be fair, it did take me a few tries to convince you to team up. You weren't lying when you said you don't have high opinions on heroes that team up. This is a special case. Plus you said you wanted me to join you. Not work with you. I don't work under anyone. Miruko said with a smirk. With a wave, Hawks walked for the door. Then I'll see you tomorrow. Just do me a favor and make sure the kid will be able to move then. Maybe don't kick her through any more walls. You train your kid your way, and I'll train mine my way. Himiko had to admit, this change of pace was rather refreshing. Normally when she had her eye on someone, when she was tracking them and learning everything she needed to know to imitate them, she had to make sure she was never noticed. It was a skill she had refined until she could all but disappear in the blink of an eye. Even in the middle of a group of people. Today though, instead of trying to be unseen, she was going out of her way to make sure her target, a certain thick-skulled academic named Tenya, knew she was watching him at all times. Making sure she was always there, maybe never in direct line of sight but always just at the corner of his eye. Always underfoot to the point that they had almost tripped several times because he wasn't careful. To top it all off, she was able to do this and not only get away with it because Tenya couldn't afford to make a scene in front of Manuel, but because she was so good at doing all this and not be noticed by Manuel at all. She really was the baddest bitch when it came to this shit. If she said so herself. It was too bad she was having to deal with said thick-skull academic while she flexed all over the place. It totally ruined her mood. Noticing Tenya start to look towards the alleyways as they walked down the street, Himiko accidentally let one of her clawed gauntlets brush against Tenya's side, scrapping the metal of his costume and ripping his attention back to the road. Not before he glared angrily at her, his helmet not hiding his displeasure at all. Sorry, you two have to do more patrolling today. It's not the most stimulating time. I'm still looking for some good jobs we can take that you two can take part in. Tenya turned away from Himiko to address Manuel. It's alright. This kind of experience is good for us. Manuel glanced back at the two before continuing on. Now that I'm thinking about it, this is a good opportunity for a lesson. That got both of their attention. Lesson, sir? Oh joy, Himiko mumbled under her breath. Do you know what a hero license actually allows heroes to do? Himiko rolled off the first thing that popped out of her head: beat up villains and lock them up and get paid to do it. Wrong. Wah? You see, Toga, what a hero can do is not so broad. The public puts a great deal of faith in us and the system we work in. With the advancement of quirk regulation, the public trusts us to make sure we only use our quirk to the extent we are allowed. We may intervene in crises and work to detain villains, but arrests are something that we lack the authority to do. That power still lies with the police alone. The same goes for punishment. That alone lies in the judiciary. We are not a villain's judge and jury. But we are their executioners, Himiko countered. I can name heroes that have killed villains. One of them is the big number 2 himself. Manuel frowned. True, there have been instances that deaths have happened, but a hero cannot go into a situation looking to take a life. We can defend ourselves, but past that, we would stop being heroes and turn into nothing more than vigilantes. To step into that role would be a great betrayal of trust. Do you understand what I am saying, Ida? Tenya jerked to a stop while Himiko raised an eyebrow. Wait a second? That almost sounded like he. Heroes cannot act on personal grudges. Manuel finished while looking right at Tenya. Holy fuck. Holy fuck, he knows Tenya's game. One sneaky glance in Himiko could tell Tenya was not happy about being found out. He was tense and his fists were gripped so tight, she thought for sure he was going to pop all his knuckles out of their sockets. At the very least, this should make her job a little easier. If Manuel was also keeping an eye on Tenya, then there was no way he was going to be able to sneak off. All her problems were solved. At least the ones dealing with Tenya. She still had to go another 4 days dealing with all this boring hero crap. When Manuel turned away and started leading them off, Himiko leaned over and whispered, "Guess that's you screwed, huh?" "Shut up, Toga." Himiko raised an eye at that. "Careful there. I'm doing this for your own good, you know. Don't go and piss me off more than you have." Himiko sighed. "Look, your plan is pretty thoroughly screwed, so just drop it. Besides, you're only guessing that you'll find him here. For all you or any of the heroes here know, Mr. Stain could have already skipped town. No. He's still here." It was the certainty in Tenya's voice that made Himiko lose a step. Looking at him closely, Himiko frowned. "How could you possibly know that?" "After my brother's attack, I looked into Stain to see if there were any patterns. In all the places he's been, he's always had at least 4 victims. My brother fits the same description as 2 others that were attacked in this city. I don't know if it's a jinx, a personal goal, or something else for Stain, but counting my brother's fall, it sums up to 3 incidents here. So the odds of Stain still being in Hosu City are incredibly high." Himiko didn't show any emotions externally, but inside she was cursing up a storm. Fucking fuck. Of course you used that fucking head of yours for something like this. So no, I'm not going to simply give up. Not when I still have a chance. The hate in Tenya's voice made Himiko start to re-evaluate her options. It was becoming more of a possibility that she was just going to have to slice apart Tenya's hamstring or Achilles tendons to keep him from getting killed. Not a pleasant option, but one she was now forced to consider. With a small flick of his wrist, Izuku moved the last piece of furniture back into place, returning the room to how it looked at the start of the day. before he and Gran Torino turned it into a war zone because of the old man's training plan, which boiled down to smack Izuku upside the head over and over again. All Might supervised as everything was done and with a nod of approval let Izuku know he was done. Good work today, young Midoriya. You survived. Izuku laughed, felt like it was pretty touch and go there for a while. You handled yourself very well. Much better than I did my first time meeting Torino. Isn't that right? Torino, who was busy munching on a taiyaki, glanced over at All Might. It would have been a small miracle for him to do worse. You were a mess back then. Haha, thank you, Torino. No, really. Kid, your big role model spent more time on his face than on his feet. Thank you. I think young Midoriya gets the point. Izuku snickered. I thought you said when you got one for all you were already perfect for it? Gran Torino laughed. His body was but the lunkhead didn't know how to use it. Want to tell you how many times he ran into a wall because he didn't know how far he was going to jump? All Might groaned. Bringing the boy here was a mistake. So, how's your head? You've been using your quirk pretty much all day. And for combat training as well. Izuku smiled brightly, no nosebleeds, and no headaches. Tapping the crest on his forehead, his smile turned to a smirk. Hatsume's invention works like a dream. I feel like I could go all night if I had to. That's good to hear, but be careful. Having support gear to help you is always good, but you shouldn't rely on it heavily. You need to continue to practice strengthening your quirk naturally. Over-reliance on gear can be costly. Understand? Izuku nodded. Yes, All Might. Still, this is good news. At least we didn't have to worry about cleaning up blood stains. Today at least, Gran Torino added with a dark laugh that sent a shiver up Izuku's spine. After just one day he understood why All Might was so scared of this old man. Still, he felt like he had done pretty well for himself, so that begged the question, so does this mean I pass? Izuku's question brought both heroes' attention back to him, with Gran Torino looking at him with a raised eyebrow. Who said anything about this being a test? Izuku shifted nervously on his feet. I mean, this training. You were making sure I was the right person. You mean like Sasaki? No. Well, not exactly like him. He kinda seemed like he already made up his mind about me. Gran Torino shook his head. I already said that I wasn't testing you for that. Tashinori has picked you to receive one for all. All I was doing was seeing what you could actually do. Speaking of one for all, motioning towards the couch, All Might took a seat himself. Come sit down, young Midoriya. There are some things we need to talk about. Important things. Izuku nodded and hurried over to take his seat. After spending all day getting trained, or beat up on by Gran Torino, he welcomed the chance to sit. Once he had though, Izuku started to notice the atmosphere in the room had changed. Both All Might and Gran Torino wore very serious faces. All Might did say this was important, but holy cow, this feels intense. Izuku sat silently, waiting for All Might to finally speak. The latter for his part seemed to be struggling on how to start. He wrung his hands together and cleared his throat several times before he seemed ready to begin. Young Midoriya, I think you should know why I asked you to intern with me for this week, and why I brought you all the way out here to Torino's place to do it. You see, I plan on giving you one for all now, and I expect you to adapt to this power under our combined oversight. Izuku's jaw hit the ground. You're giving it to me now? All Might nodded. Gran Torino was there for me when I received it from my master and helped train me. I figured his past experience would be a great benefit, and the internship period gives us time to work privately that we wouldn't have otherwise. Unless we waited until the end of a term for a break, but that's still a ways off. And well, time aside, Izuku missed the look Gran Torino gave All Might at the mention of time. You've shown me more than enough evidence that you are ready to receive this power. Your progress in class. Your accomplishments in the sports festival. You've made progress in leaps and bounds, young Midoriya. So one for all is yours now. If you will take it. Hearing this felt unreal for Izuku. It was almost like back when he had first learned about one for all. His world was rocked to its very core. And yet, this is what he had been preparing for since that day. It might have happened before he had expected, but that didn't change anything. His answer was still the same as it had been that day: I'll do dash. All Might raised his hand, cutting Izuku off with a sharp gesture. However, before I have your final answer, there is one last thing we have to discuss. I will only accept your answer after this, because young Midoriya, you deserve to know everything before you make this decision. Everything, All Might? Izuku asked with a tilt to his head. Everything about One for All. Its power and its history. Now as to what I've told you before dash. One for All goes back generations. One person takes the power and improves it, before they then pass it on to the next person. They too will improve the power before they pass it on. As the quirk is passed from torchbearer to torchbearer, the power increases and grows. I think that's what you told me. Izuku recited the words All Might had told him when he first told him about his quirk. All Might smirked. Very true. For One for All to be passed, the next bearer has to take in some of the previous holder's DNA. Oh. So that's how it's given. So it's like a blood transfusion. Wait. Oh my god. Izuku's hands went to his face in horror. All Might blinked in surprise as Izuku started to panic. What is it, young Midoriya? Toga. That was not the answer All Might had been expecting. Young Toga? What about her? I've started to give her BLO. Izuku slapped a hand over his mouth and his eyes snapped over at Gran Torino, who frowned. All Might quickly put together what Izuku was about to say, and why he had suddenly stopped. Ah. I see. I had heard you and young Uraraka had started making donations. Izuku nodded, looking sad. I'm not going to be able to anymore. It feels like I just backstabbed her. Gran Torino looked over at All Might. Something you want to fill me in on? All Might shook his head. I'm afraid it's a bit of a school secret. Just like us, people are allowed their privacy and secrets. But to your concern, young Midoriya, you won't have to stop. Izuku looked up in surprise. I won't? In order for One for All to be transferred, the user has to want it to be passed on. So it can't be done by accident. Neither can it be stolen. So you can continue to help young Toga with your donations. Izuku relaxed instantly, leaning back into the seat and letting out a long sigh of relief. That's good. I was really worried. Izuku paused as he went over All Might's words again in his head. Wait. What do you mean neither can it be stolen? Do you mean that it can't be suppressed like by Aizawa-sensei's erasure quirk? No. Not like that. But you can't steal a quirk. Can you? The looks that came over All Might and Gran Torino filled Izuku with a strange kind of dread. A quirk was a part of a person. With One for All there was something heroic and beautiful about it being something that was passed from one to another. In some ways that person became a part of something greater. But on the other end, the idea that something like that could be stolen was horrific. Young Midoriya, as you already know, One for All is a special quirk. It is unlike almost any other that has existed. Izuku caught the one word that made that line so important, almost. All Might nodded. There is one other quirk that has existed since quirks first manifested in our world. It is from this quirk that One for All was created. You see, One for All has a brother, so to speak. A quirk that can rob others of their powers and grants them to its user. All for one. All for one. So it's just like it sounds. It seems like it's the exact opposite of One for All. Correct. However, this quirk could also take these stolen quirks and grant them to others. It is from this aspect of All for One that One for All comes from. This happened many years ago. When the quirk phenomenon had just started and the world was still crumbling from the shift of what it meant to be human. As you know from your history lessons, this time period for humanity was marked with great social unrest and the advancement of our civilization coming to a grinding halt before crumpling into all-out madness. Some of the documentaries I've seen really paint it as a time of horror and chaos. They say it's a miracle humanity was able to survive. Gran Torino scoffed, doesn't even scratch the surface, kid. All the big governments censor the hell out of those kinds of shows. They leave enough to let you know it was bad, but they want to scrub away all the worst horrors they can. Too ashamed at all the blood humanity has on its hands. And, All Might added, because some things, some people are best forgotten. Izuku looked at All Might confused while he continued on. You see, during this time of chaos a lone man began to rise above the bloodshed and was able to gather people to his cause. This man used All for One to steal people's quirks and gained overwhelming power. As he grew, so did his influence over the country. He moved his people into positions of influence as his pawns, and soon he became Japan's de facto ruler. Never in the light himself, of course, that was the job of the pawns who he controlled. Izuku frowned. What truly scared him was that this wasn't some totally new thing for him to hear. In some of the hero forums he would read through, there was always one or two posts talking about the secret societies behind the scenes that had risen to power during the chaos in the past. Some even said that everything was connected to just one person. Of course everyone would just ignore them. After all, this is all fiction, right? At least that's what it's supposed to be. All Might shook his head. It may not be in your textbooks or documentaries, but it's all real. But how is this connected to One for All? You're still focused on All for One's more terrible power. It's power to take, but remember it also has the power to give. You see, this man had lieutenants as well as pawns. These few that he trusted, he would grant them quirks of their own as a reward for their loyalty and hard work. However, in doing so he could also weed out the weak ones that would only hold him back. While some could adapt to their new powers, others could not handle the strain and many were left as empty husks. Dolls that lost their free will and could no longer speak. Dolls, but dangerous dolls. Throw them into a populated area and even if they died, the destruction they could cause was immense. Bile threatened to creep its way up Izuku's throat as a single word came to his mind hearing this, Nomu. All Might nodded, that's correct. While we can't say for sure how that monster was made, the similarities are too great to ignore. But that is one side of this story. You see, while some were overcome by the quirks and were burned out or were able to adapt and gain control of them, there were also cases where the quirks mutated and blended together, becoming something entirely new. This man had a little brother. He was small, frail and quirkless, but he harbored a strong sense of justice. Watching his brother rise to power tore his heart, but even feeling such pain, he stood to oppose him. I do not know why the man did what he did next. Perhaps it was his attempt to be kind and convince his little brother to join him, or maybe it was to bend him to his will, but when the man's little brother confronted him, the man forced upon him a quirk that stockpiles power. Stockpiles power? Wait, that almost sounds like Dash. All Might could see Izuku's eyes widen and he nodded, but that day the winds of fate made it so things did not go the way the man intended. You see, his little brother did in fact have a quirk. It was so weak and meaningless that neither brother knew about it. It was a quirk that could pass itself on to another. These two quirks merged into one and One for All was born. Gran Torino huffed, from the dark bowels of evil the bright light of justice was born. So with One for All, the younger brother was able to defeat this man? No. Remember what I said. One for All is a power that's as strong as it is because all the previous bearers added their strength to it. So when the little brother had it, the gap in their strength was still a vast unimaginable chasm. Izuku sat, a deep frown on his face, so he wasn't able to defeat him and he continued his reign. Hold on. This villain, if he was alive when Quirk started, that was so long ago. He'd have to have died a long time ago, right? All Might shook his head, no. At some point he must have found a quirk that halted his aging because he has been around this whole time. His hold on the country might have loosened with the rise of pro-heroes, but he was still always there, lurking in the shadows. Constantly at odds with the bearers of One for All. Constantly at odds? That's right. You see, the younger brother might not have been able to defeat his brother, so he entrusted his power to the future generations. Little by little this power grew so that one day it would be strong enough to defeat this great evil. All the while, All for One hunted down the bearers of One for All. He hunted. Izuku gulped, paling at the thought. Yes. While I do not know the personal history of many of the previous bearers, I know that most died at the hands of this villain. My master included. From what I understand, this villain hunted down the bearers because he feared that this power, a power he helped create and could not steal for himself, would one day mark his end. An end that I brought to him. Izuku shot up straight in his seat. You beat him. I did. 6 years ago, I finally confronted that monster and I beat him. Izuku was about to leap up and congratulate him. Of course, All Might would be the one to defeat this horrid villain. But just as quickly, the gears in his mind started to turn, making him think and making him put together pieces to a puzzle he had been missing since he first met All Might, 6 years ago. 6 years was when? Your injuries. The words tumbled out of Izuku's mouth before he had a chance to stop them. All Might sighed, his hand brushing along his mutilated left side. That's right. When I finally fought him, victory came with a steep cost, but I thought it worth it because I had finally won. That I had finally killed Dash. As All Might spoke, his voice had become harsher. Angrier. Past memories threatened to bubble up, but he fought them back. Anger was of no use here. However, he had said enough, because when he looked over at Izuku, the boy was looking at him in shock. Killed? All Might closed his eyes. Yes, as a rule, I always hold back. Killing, as a pro hero we do have some protection since we are sometimes fighting villains that don't value human life. Even so, I hold back. With my power, it's a line that could be so easily crossed, even if I don't mean to. But against that monster, I could not hold back. If I had, I would be dead. Before I delivered the final blow, he had already ripped out my left side. In this one instance, there was no choice. Izuku nodded, but it was still a lot to take in. He knew some pro heroes had taken lives before. Some, like Endeavor, were more known for it. But All Might, up until now, he had never had to resort to that kind of drastic action. Unfortunately though, it wasn't enough. Izuku's thoughts ground to a halt. He looked up, confused as to what that meant. All Might? I thought that 6 years ago I had finally ended this monster's reign of terror, but it's become clear to me that I failed. He's still alive, and I believe he's the one pulling the League of Villains strings. The League. But Shigaraki Dash? Remember what I said about pawns. He's clearly set that man up as the figurehead while he stays in the shadows. The Nomu too. An empty doll with multiple quirks put into it, though these monsters are much more refined than the husks he used to create. Less a failed byproduct and more an engineered weapon if I had to guess. Fortunately we have it locked away, so we shouldn't have to worry about it again. His world spinning, Izuku tried to keep calm. He had settled on the fact that Tamura was the worst the League had. A leader with an insane worldview who hated All Might. But if there was someone worse behind him, with connections to help create such a horrible monster. Could there be more? More? Nomas. All Might frowned. I can't say for certain. I can't imagine, however, that a monster like that is something that can be made quickly. That was a monster made to kill me. It's possible it was a long-shot plan, or perhaps more. I'd like to tell you not to think about it, but I cannot. Nor can I tell you that this will all be okay. Because now this whole issue will soon be revolving around you. Izuku shot up out of his seat, eyes wide with shock and fear. Me. Why? All Might looked at Izuku with great sympathy, because you'll become the 9th bearer of One for All. And with it all the responsibilities that will entail. The next few seconds was just silence as Izuku processed that. As he started to think beyond One for All and the power and legacy it held and started to think about the burden and horrors tied to it. Izuku's knees buckled, and he fell back into his seat. Oh. It was such a pathetic response from Izuku, he knew this, but it was the only one that he could bring himself to say. When I found you, I still thought he was dead, and that you would be the first bearer not to have to confront him. Now though this fate to face this ultimate evil in an ultimate showdown, will be passed on to you, if you choose to take one for all. If I choose? Izuku knew what he should say to that. Even as he sat shivering in his seat, he knew what the correct answer was. Just say yes. You have to say yes. He spent a year preparing you, so you can't just run away now. Even if this is way more than I could have imagined, darn it, just say it. Don't be such a coward, a failure now. Don't go back to being worthless. Gripping the seat tightly, Izuku willed himself to stop shaking and tried to speak, but was cut off by All Might. Don't give me your answer now, young Midoriya. Izuku's mouth clamped shut, confusion written all over his face. Before, you took me up on my offer without hesitation. You were ready to walk down this path not knowing what was ahead for you. However, now that you do know, and I know too, I cannot accept an instant answer from you. To do so would be unfair and cruel. You deserve the time to think this through. So, I want you to take the rest of the night and really think about this. You owe this to yourself, young Midoriya. Slowly Izuku nodded and got up from his seat. He looked at All Might, then at Grand Torino, the old man watching him closely. Finally, he was able to work up the strength to talk. I think I'll go to my room and think. Of course. All Might? Yes? This villain. What's his name? There was a short pause before All Might spoke. I don't know. So much about him has been lost to history. My master before me never used it, and I don't think her predecessors used it either. He never used it either. To everyone, he was all for one. The quirk and the man, one and the same. With that, Izuku shakily left the room, leaving the two heroes alone. When they heard the repaired door to Izuku's room close, All Might slumped into his seat. Darn it. You had to tell him, Toshinori. Of course I had to tell him. Not telling him was never an option I even considered. I just hoped that he would have been the first of us to be free of all this. So what do you think he'll do? Sighing, All Might rubbed his brow. That boy has a true sense of justice in him. He'll do the right thing, to a fault. I know he's the one to inherit One for All, but a part of me hopes he tells me no tomorrow. Gran Torino shook his head. That won't protect him from what's coming. If anything, he'll be in a worse spot. He's already on the League of Villains radar after the stunt he pulled with that Shigaraki stooge. I know that. And I'm sure he does too. Still, I can't help but hope if I'm still holding it, I'll be the more enticing target. We both know you can't do that. This has to happen, Toshinori. You picked the right kid for this. You know it. I know it. Now we just have to see if the kid knows it too. All Might knew Gran Torino was right. For what was coming, Izuku was going to need all the power he could get. Not having One for All could very well be a death sentence for him. Sighing, All Might pressed his hand against his temple harder. Whether he liked it or not, this had to happen. And whether he liked it or not, he had dragged Izuku into a war that the poor boy could not have seen coming when he had agreed to his request to become his successor. All Might recalled the promise he had made to Inko so long ago. To keep Izuku safe so that he could reach his future. Reach his potential to become a hero. If she ever finds out what I've done to her son, I doubt she'll ever forgive me. For pretty much the first hour that Izuku returned to his room, he simply existed in a robotic trance. Stripping out of his costume and cleaning off a few scuff marks. He then folded everything up and put it all back into his briefcase. After that, he pulled out some fresh clothes to sleep in and then sat at the edge of his bed and stared at the wall while his room got darker and darker with the fading dusk. It was only when the room was illuminated by the dim lights of street lamps outside that Izuku broke out of his haze and started to cry. Fear fueled every sob that he tried desperately to keep the others from hearing. Bringing his knees up to his chest and dragging his pillow over as well, Izuku curled up and spent the next hour sobbing. It was only when the apartment was silent, and Izuku was alone awake, that he sat back up, took a deep breath, and let out the longest sigh he probably ever had. Okay, Izuku. That's enough of that. Time to answer the big question. What are you going to do? Say no? Izuku frowned. That's not an option. Say yes? Why? Izuku hacked up a cough as the word got stuck in his throat. He tried to say the word again but couldn't bring himself to do it. So let's recap, you're not going to say no. Like you said, that's not an option. All Might's down to only an hour that he can use one for all. He doesn't have time to find someone else and train them. Togata. No. That's not an option and you know it. Even if All Might was open to someone else being his successor, he turned him down for you. You're his successor and besides, would you really want anyone else to have to deal with this? No, even Izuku was shocked at how firm that answer came out. And don't forget, you might be dooming All Might. If the League of Villains finds him when he's not able to fight back. Or All for One. Izuku shuddered, forcing himself not to imagine that scene, but still made himself say it, he'll die. If anything, this past year and even more so this past month had hammered home how mortal All Might was. So the answer should be obvious. Saying no, it's just not an option. When you lay it all out, it's the most logical conclusion. So why aren't you saying yes? Izuku, alone in his dark quiet room, finally gave an answer, I'm afraid. Becoming a hero came with risks. Growing up while he idolized heroes, he had seen enough news broadcasts to know that sometimes, heroes got hurt. Sometimes they died. Of course he always pushed those thoughts aside quickly enough. Especially after meeting Ochako and All Might and their words of encouragement helping to ensure his dream to become the greatest hero wasn't something that could be dashed. Natural disasters, accidents, and villains. These were just part of the life he was choosing to become a part of. The events at the USJ made that crystal clear, however his words at the sports festival were not just for show. He had spoken from the heart, and had no intention of letting them stop him. So what's different now? All for one. His answer was instant. Villains he could understand at least in broad terms. Villains were bad people who heroes had to stop. Granted, Izuku didn't think he could ever understand how a person could take such joy in hurting other people. And even after hearing Tamura's speech, his reasoning still escaped Izuku. But they were still just people and in the end, heroes always won. Except with All for One. The way All Might had spoken of him. He wasn't speaking about a person. He spoke about him like he was a monster. An immortal monster that had existed to cause chaos and pain. A force of evil that stood opposite to everything Izuku could hold dear. Whose purpose was to hunt down every bearer of One for All, and since he could not have the power, to kill it and whoever held it. That concept was just beyond Izuku. It fit more with fantasy and horror stories than real life. Yet it was real, and it was a life he was about to step into. If he chose to. You know you can't say in. Arg, I'm going in circles. With an exasperated groan, Izuku fell backwards onto his bed and covered his face with his arms. I wish I could talk to someone. He lay still for a bit before rolling onto his side and locking his eyes on his phone, resting nearby. Instinct took over and with a quick pull with his quirk, Izuku's phone landed in his hands and working on autopilot Izuku did what came natural when he needed to talk to someone he knew he could trust with anything. With a few quick taps, Izuku had Ochako's contact page brought up and his thumb hovering over the call button. Grunting in annoyance, Izuku clutched the phone tightly in his hand and brought both hands up to his head. What am I doing? She's probably asleep at this point, and besides that, she's in the middle of her internship. How can I be so selfish to bother her with my problems right in dash? Hello? Deku? Izuku's eyes snapped open when he heard Ochako's voice coming through his phone speaker. Blinking a few times in confusion, he pulled his hand back and gaped in horror as he realized he had pressed the call button by accident. If Izuku was capable of swearing, he would have made Katsuki very proud at that moment. Deku? Hi. Uraraka. How's things? Things are good. You okay? You sound a little off? Izuku gulped. Oh me? No, just nervous I woke you up. I know how late it is and… honestly, I kinda didn't mean to call. There was a brief pause and Izuku started to worry she might be upset with him. Which would be just the perfect cherry on top of this whole horrible evening. When she started to giggle, his fears vanished and he swore he was about to melt at the sound. Sounds like I just got but dialed. Ha ha, yeah. Well, you know me and my stupid butt. The sound that came out of his phone's speaker sent a jolt through Izuku that sent his heart racing. He had to be hearing things, or it was just a bad connection, but he swore he just heard Ochako moan. And hearing that right in his ear made his body burn. Yeah, I do. Why, ha? I mean, I've done that before. But dial. So yeah, I do know what you mean. So don't worry about it. Ha 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 ha. Opft, Izuku laughed along with Ochako, now convinced he had just misheard her humming before. Gotcha. I totally misheard you then. It almost sounded like you'd been checking me out or something. Funny, right? Squeak. Uraraka? Was that dash? Sorry, just moving to a place with better reception. I'm in an office building and it has dead zones. Well, I'm sure you're wanting to get some sleep, so I'll just dash. Actually, I'm getting my stuff ready to move. Miruko is taking me with her to the new place she's going to patrol. So I have time to talk while I finish packing. Oh, that was a dangerous offer. Izuku did not under any circumstances want to clue Ochako into how freaked out he was over One for All for One and everything in between. This was not a topic to be done over the phone. Especially when she was in the middle of her own training and taking care of her own business. So training under Miruko has been an experience. She's not like All Might or Gunhead or anyone at school for that matter. She's tough, really tough, but I can't help but respect her for it. I might really hate her after the ice bath she made me take, Izuku hissed at that, but so far, I think her training is working. I feel different. Kinda hard to put into words, really. That's really incredible, Uraraka, Izuku said. It was true, of course, and while he was interested in how her training was going, he was also screaming at himself to find a way to end the call before she asked, "So how's your internship going? Is it nice to have All Might's undivided attention again?" Ochako snickered at the end, but Izuku was too frozen to notice. His mind raced for an answer, before settling on something simple. Just say it's good. Just like old times. That's all he had to say, and he would be able to escape this call. Yeah. It's G-. The word got stuck in his throat. It's G- again, he couldn't make himself say it. Everything phi-, nothing. With each failed attempt his voice started to waver. The pitch would change, and after every failed attempt Izuku was becoming more and more aware that Ochako had gone dead silent on the other end of the call. Finally, after several failed tries, Izuku fell suspect and just held the phone to his ear. Deku, Ochako's voice was soft. Soothing. It was everything he needed, and it terrified him because he knew that when she asked there wasn't going to be a force on this earth that was going to keep him from answering, "Are you okay?" "No. I'm scared." "Scared? Deku, what happened?" Izuku wasn't about to go into the real details. That was not something you told someone over the phone. But there were things he could say at least to get the point across. All Might and I. We talked. Talked? About what? It was a pretty harsh reality check. About the risks that come with being a hero and being the one to hold One for All. He told me about how he almost died. A villain found out about it and almost killed All Might to get it. Oh my god. Is that how he got All? Yeah. Oh man. And I guess after hearing him just lay it out like that, it got me really scared. I just don't know if I'm the right person. If I'm worthy or if I'll be able to do this. Of course you can. It wasn't just what Ochako said. It was how instantaneously she said it. Deku, it's okay to be scared. Honestly, I'd be really worried if you weren't. But it's okay to be scared. It's okay to have doubts. That doesn't change who you are. It doesn't change what All Might saw in you. You've accomplished so much in such a short amount of time, Deku. That's something that you did. You got yourself to where you are now. So be as scared as you want to be, but don't let that fear make you forget who you are. You're Midoriya Izuku. You're Deku, the future ninth bearer of One for All. And you're my best friend. So I know you'll be okay. New tears started falling down Izuku's cheeks, though this time they were not tears of fear. I guess I just needed to hear that. It's what I'm here for. To make sure you don't go forgetting silly things like that. So, all better? Yeah. Thank you, Uraraka. After some well wishes and exchanged good nights, both hung up and Izuku lay his head on his pillow. His answer for All Might now held firmly in his heart and mind. The dimly lit bar was quiet save for the soft clinking of ice against glass. Tamura nursed the drink in his hand, swirling the ice and amber liquid around as he waited. Kurogiri has left some time ago to go and retrieve their potential new member, so now he was left all alone as he waited. The TV off to the side of the room was muted, so he couldn't hear anything from the other side. Yet with a static screen he knew that the feed was still live and that he was still being watched. A flash of black mist pulled him out of his bored existence and he turned to see if he was finally going to get to meet this famed killer. Putting down his drink, Tamura pulled out a pale severed hand and placed it on his face. When the clammy cold flesh made contact with his skin, he took a moment to breathe easily. As the black mist faded and Kurogiri returned to his spot behind the bar dressed in his dapper suit, Tamura finally got to see the great hero killer in person. First and foremost, the smell of blood and death radiated off the man. There was no mistaking it, this was a killer in front of him. He could also tell that Stain was taking in his surroundings. Eyes scanning the room. Clearly he was making sure that no trap was suddenly going to be sprung on him. Overly cautious. It was annoying. The next thing Tamura noticed was what Stain was wearing. Boots, knives everywhere, and a tattered mask that Tamura swore he had seen before. There was something about the whole get-up that creeped into his head and wouldn't let go. His thoughts were interrupted when Stain spoke up. So, you're the bunch that attacked Udata, and now you're looking to add me to your group. Why? Leaning on the counter with an elbow, Tamura finally addressed Stain. He spoke respectfully, but still sounded somewhat bored. After the last attempt, we lost a great deal of our former members. We attempted to go with quantity over quality and it cost us. With the trash now in custody, it's obvious that it's quality we need. And you're well known to us criminals. Your experience and knowledge would be a valuable asset to us. Tamura watched as Stain narrowed his eyes at him. He could see the man was thinking. Weighing options. Tell me. What is your goal? What do you and yours want to achieve? Tamura shrugged. Easy. Kill All Might. After that we destroy everything we don't like. Reaching behind the counter, Tamura pulled out a newspaper and laid it on the countertop. Right on the front page was a picture of Izuku as he celebrated his first place medal ceremony, like this little shit. He made a fool of me, so I'm going to kill him. If not for him, my plan would have worked. Stain frowned at the picture. The boy All Might chose to train. All the more reason to kill him. Him and the rest of his class while we're at it. Stain's frown turned into a sneer. That's it? You simply want to destroy the things you don't like? That's not a goal. It's the ranting of a child throwing a temper tantrum. Tamura's fingers dug into the wood of the countertop. What did you say? Coming here was a mistake. I thought perhaps I had found allies in my mission, but you lot are only interested in destruction, aren't you? What's the point in that if you don't have a cause to back your actions? Foolishness. This is nothing but foolishness. Stain's hands raised up to the knives along his chest. Before I leave this place, I will make sure your filth does not spread any further. Tamura frowned and stood up from his chair. Seriously? You're one of those high and mighty types? Kurogiri glanced between the two, then towards the computer screen. Master, should I intercede? We had hoped that this man would help Shigaraki grow, but I do not think this is possible now. No, this is fine. Tamura needs to grow, but he won't if we always help him. This is the perfect chance for him to do just that. This moment will spur his growth, I know it. Tamura didn't like that. Another lesson. He knew that's what senseis were supposed to do. Teach and all that, but it didn't make it any less annoying. Stain, knives in hand, glanced back at the screen. So you really are nothing more than a child. Bastard. Tamura didn't even get a full step forward before Stain moved. Rushing forward, his right hand extended to his side so that the knife sliced through Kurogiri's arm while he drove the left into Tamura's shoulder, driving him into the floor. While the two fell, Stain quickly brought the right knife across his face, licking the blade as he did before he moved it to rest against Tamura's neck. Ow, ow, ow. Damn it. Why are you so strong? Kurogiri, get him out of here. When Stain didn't immediately vanish in a cloud of black mist, Tamura glanced over and saw Kurogiri slumped over the bar countertop. I can't move my body. It must be his quirk. Gar. You're kidding me. Stain looked down at Tamura, contempt radiating from his eyes. It's true that in this world the word hero has lost all meaning. We live in a society of fakes, but the same can be said for the criminals. They call themselves villains thinking it puts them above everyone else, when they are nothing more than trash throwing their power around. Trash like you are just more cork for the furnace. There to be purged. Tamura growled and grabbed the knife pressed against his neck. Is the need to have some kind of goal, creed, or a symbol something that your generation needs? You old shits piss me off. His grip on the knife tightened as he dug his fingers into the metal, and cracks began to spread over it and the bright steel dulled and began to rust. I don't see the point of any of that crap. The world we live in, that puts value on such stupid things. That holds trash like all might on a pedestal. I want to destroy it all and leave nothing but rubble. The knife exploded into dust as Stain quickly let it go. Leaping back as Tamura took a swipe at him but missing. Damn you. I finally started to heal and you go and stab me. We don't have anyone that can heal me. I'm going to make you pay for this. I see, so that is what your end goal is. Tamura blinked, caught off guard as Stain didn't attack again but instead sheathed his other knife. Wait, huh? I needed to see what you were really about. Those that are staring death in the face tend to show their true selves. You may not realize it, but you too have a creed buried deep inside you. We may differ on what we want in the end, but how we get there is the same. The destruction of this world we live in now. Are you kidding me? That was a test? You're a fucking nut job. Still, Kurogiri said as he stood up, now able to move, does this mean you wish to join our ranks? Grr, having him as a party member makes my skin crawl. And yet, if he joins us, the power of our group will grow. It seems the negotiations have borne fruit. Stain huffed, it's clear to me that eventually I will have to dispose of you, but for now I would like to see what you do moving forward. You are but a child, and yet what is a child's purpose but to grow? For now, I must return to Hosa City. My work there is not finished yet. While Kurogiri prepared to take Stain away, Tamura frowned to himself. He didn't like this. Stain's whole outlook pissed him off. And he fucking stabbed me. I'd been able to avoid that when that crazy little bitch tried it before. Wait. Hold it. Stain paused before he walked into the black portal. What now? You don't have a kid, do you? Stain narrowed his eyes. What? When I attack you, some little blonde bitch tried to kill me. Tried to stab me, in fact. Stain turned to look back at Tamura as he continued, she was dressed up like you. Costume had a few extra bits, but it was just like yours. Even had that same stupid mask. This child. What did she look like? Blonde. Had yellow eyes and teeth like a fucking vampire. She'd turned herself into one of my members to try and get close to me. Kurogiri took over. The girl was on TV at UA's sports festival. I believe her name is Dash. Toga, Stain finished. Tamura nodded, yeah. So who is she? Your kid, or a fucking disciple? Stain stood silently before turning back towards the black portal. No. She was just a rabid dog let off her leash. Nothing more. If the fake heroes have her, then now she's a diseased stray. You just wanted young Midoriya and myself here so you'd have someone to cook for you? That's why you suggested we come here. All Might glared over at Gran Torino as the older hero sat at the table and smirked past a glass of juice, watching the number one hero in the nation whisk up some eggs. What can I say? Even I get tired of instant noodles every now and then. No wonder you got so short. Eating like this, Master would be ashamed. Ha! You got that right. But at least I don't look half as bad as you do nowadays. All Might chuckled as he poured the eggs into a heated pan. Laugh it up, but I can still go to a beach and women won't run from me. For an hour. It's an hour longer than you, old man. Gran Torino leaned back. Right, and when's the last time you actually took the time to spend with a lady? Pointing his spatula at Gran Torino, All Might smirked triumphantly. In fact, only a couple of days ago I had lunch with a very nice lady at her invitation. She made us some very nice sandwiches. Really? You had a lunch date? More of an impromptu invite, but it still counts. Ha! That must have been something to see. Big old All Might having a little bit to eat with a lady friend. Newspapers will be sorry they missed that headline. All Might went back to the eggs. Actually, Toshinori had the date. Not All Might. You're kidding? Some lady actually wanted to eat lunch when you're all scrawny and crap? Who? Who is this apparent saint of a woman that decided to take such pity on you? Actually, what's wrong with her? Saints aren't so kind. All Might frowned. Inko is a very kind and considerate woman. Stick to the saint comparison. Gran Torino was about to take a drink of his juice, but stopped. Wait. Inko? Doesn't the kid have a mother with that name? Mistakes have been made. Well, you see. Of all the dumb. Are you insane? Look, Dash. You were supposed to be looking for a successor. Not lonely MILFs. Look, Dash. And she's married, for goodness sake. Didn't Nana and I raise you better than this? Look. Nothing has happened. She got involved in the boys' training. Was worried he was getting pushed too hard and wanted updates. We've been around each other for over a year now. She is a kind woman and a friend. Aha! And the husband? All Might frowned as he went back to the scrambled eggs. Honestly, when Sasaki brought him up, that was the first I heard of the man. Inko or young Midoriya never talked about him once around me. Well, remember, separated doesn't mean divorced. Torino, nothing has happened, and I doubt anything will. We're friends. Friends. You're a friend that gets invited into her home for a little lunch. Kid must have had a blast with you there. But I guess if you've been spending time with the family, he was able to keep his fanboy under control. Young Midoriya wasn't in at the time. All Might said without thinking. He paused after and winced. Oh, that was a mistake. Why did I just say that? How can you be this goddamned old and be this goddamn thick-headed? All Might, deciding he did not want to talk about this anymore, focused back on making breakfast. Gran Torino, getting the hint, rolled his eyes and sipped on his juice. The two were silent for a while before All Might looked up at a clock on the wall, noting the late hour. A motion Gran Torino noticed. Let the boy come down when he's ready. It's not like we have to leave right away, and you wanted him to take some time to think this over. I know. Besides, after the beating I gave him, of course he'd want to sleep in. The two shared a small laugh before All Might plated the eggs and handed them over. Walking back to the stove, he started cracking open some more eggs when he heard a door open and close. Both heroes watched the hallway until Izuku emerged. Well, look who's finally decided to join us. Good morning, young Midoriya. You're just in time for breakfast. Pull up a chair and I'll get you some eggs. Want some juice? We have orange, apple, and grape. I'll do it. All Might waved his hand, focused on his prep. No. I don't mind making breakfast, young Midoriya. You just dash. Toshinori, Gran Torino's voice stopped All Might and he looked up at him. Only to see him looking right at Izuku. When All Might turned to finally look at the boy, he quickly realized he hadn't been talking about breakfast. Izuku stood in the middle of the room, back straight, shoulders squared, and with a fire of determination blazing in his eyes. Putting everything aside, All Might turned his full attention back towards Izuku. Young Midoriya? I'll do it, Izuku repeated. I'll take one for all and carry on its legacy. Even if that means that one day I'll have to face All for One, I'll do it. I'm here to become the next greatest hero, and I'm not going to be able to do that if I run away. I'll face everything that comes my way head on. Doesn't matter if it's Nomas, Shigaraki, or All for One. So I'll do it. Izuku wasn't sure what kind of response to expect, so he waited. After waking up, he repeated the words in his head over and over, and the moment he stepped into the room with everyone, he didn't wait to say them. Even after a good night's sleep, Ochako's words of reassurance still echoed in his heart. With that, and his own dream fueling him, his determination hadn't lessened at all, but only gotten stronger. He was here for a reason, and he wasn't going to back down now. Gran Torino nodded in approval. Well said, kid. All Might grinned widely and puffed up with pride. Literally. Young Midoriya. Dropping what he was doing, All Might hurried over to Izuku and put a hand on his shoulder. The burden I am putting on you is great and terrible. Yet even knowing this, you've chosen to take up the torch. I am so proud of you. It may be harder than I first thought. Everything you told me was horrible and terrifying, but at the same time you've used one for all to save so many people. You said one for all stands opposed to all for one, and while that's true, one for all stands up for everyone that can't do so themselves. I want to save those people. I want to protect them for the dark they know nothing about so that they never learn about it. The blaze of determination in Izuku's eyes was only matched by the fire of pride in All Might's. With a simple nod, All Might reached up to his head and plucked out a strand of hair. Then there is nothing left to be said. Gran Torino blinked, a little startled at this turn. Wait. Now. All Might nodded. It'll take a few hours before his body absorbs the power. The window is perfect. Turning his attention back to Izuku, All Might held up the strand of hair between them. Young Midoriya, this is a power that has been passed down for generations. Every time the previous bearer did two things with it. They worked it so the flame grew stronger, and then entrusted that power to the next generation. For 40 years I have done the first. I have put my heart and soul into one for all, giving it all the power I could, and now, after so many years, I am so very grateful that I may have the honor of doing the second. Passing this on to you, young Midoriya. Now, eat this. Izuku's face, which had been beaming with pride, broke. Now utterly confused, he looked at All Might and could only say, huh? Gran Torino fell out of his chair, laughing so hard he couldn't control himself, while All Might realized he might have explained that ending just a bit more. Yes. Remember I said you just had to absorb some of my DNA into yourself? But I thought it was like a blood transfusion or something? Yes, that's one way it can be done, and has been done. It's not like it takes more than a drop, but this is more normal. Eating hair is normal? Ha 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 ha. Toshinori, just because this is what Nana did, doesn't make it normal. Gran Torino was now rolling along the floor, completely besides himself. While the heroic mood was thoroughly dashed, Izuku decided that waiting and questioning the method wasn't going to get him anywhere. With a small tug of his quirk, because he wanted to be a little dramatic about the situation, Izuku grabbed the hair and took a deep breath before he stuffed the hair into his mouth. After attempting to chew and swallow it, the hair immediately got tangled on his tongue and in his teeth. All Might, seeing him struggle and turning a little green, suddenly remembered something very important. Oh, Master gave me a drink when we were doing this. Would you like some juice to wash it down? When Izuku nodded vigorously, All Might rushed to pour him a glass. After 3 full glasses of orange juice, the deed was done. Putting the glass down, Izuku looked over himself. Curling his fingers and flexing his arms, I don't feel different? It'll take a few hours for One for All to absorb into your system. But it's in you now. One for All is yours. It's mine. One for All. Izuku's awe of the moment came to a stop when something crossed his mind. He had One for All now, but where did that leave All Might? All Might. What about you? If I have One for All, what happens to you? All Might smiled and waved off his concerns. Oh, don't worry about that. You have the torch, but I still have the embers. Embers? That's right. The power won't leave me right away. I'll still be able to use it for some time. My master was able to use the embers for a couple of years when she passed it on to me. True, it'll eventually fade, but that was already my fate. I'm down to an hour that my body can handle already. This, in a way, just makes everything even. Izuku nodded. Then there's nothing to worry about. I was worried there for a second that I suddenly took All Might away from the world. I'm glad you're going to be right here with me still. Izuku missed the look shared between All Might and Gran Torino. Missed the solemn frowns and downcast eyes. I'll be with you every step I can, young Midoriya. I just wish I knew how much time I really had. Shaking his head and shrinking back down, All Might refocused on the task at hand. Now, young Midoriya, some rules for today. Because we are not staying here. Izuku looked up from his plate of eggs. Oh? That's right. You and Torino will be joining me as I do a quick patrol today. That got Izuku excited. The thought of doing hero work with All Might, it was impossible not to be over the moon, really? What kind of patrolling? Are we going after any villains? Public appearances? Easy there. Let me rephrase. Torino and I will be going on a quick patrol. You will be watching and not getting involved. In any way. Izuku deflated hearing that. Furthermore, today you are forbidden from using your quirk. Am I clear? My quirk? I don't understand. You'll be absorbing One for All while we are out. You won't be doing anything that requires you to use your quirk, which means this is the best time for this. I'm not sure how your psychokinesis will act when combined with One for All. So to be safe, I don't want to see you blowing. No quirks. You watch and take notes. Understand? Yes, sir. Good. Once we get back, hopefully you'll have absorbed One for All fully, and then we can start working with you to see what we're dealing with. I'd rather you not lose control in the middle of the city. Izuku nodded, then looked down at his hands. I wonder, can I lift a building now? No lifting buildings. Maybe I can make myself fly without having to have my gravity taken away? No flying. Oh, my barrier. I wonder if No barriers. No quirks. I'm not taking you back home with an exploded brain. Your mother would kill me. Yeah, then Uraraka would kill me. Both stopped and looked at each other before bursting out laughing. Gran Torino just rolled his eyes at the pair. If you two are done, we should probably start getting ready. It's a bit of a drive. It'd be easier if we could take a train, but I think we don't want the attention until we make it to the actual city. Oh, that reminds me, where are we going? If we're driving, it must be far. Izuku asked as he got up to clean his plate. Hosa City. Freezing on the spot, Izuku's jaw opened and closed several times before he could whisper, the hero killer. All Might nodded, yes. While I can't take part in the full manhunt because of my time limit, I think it's important for me to be there. Have the public see me to put their minds at ease. I don't see myself actually catching the fiend, but fortunately there are so many other heroes there too, we shouldn't have to worry. So you're there for moral support, really? That, plus there's a chance me being there will cause this villain to panic and flee out into the open. Or he'll come for me, in that case it'll all be over and we can leave before my time limit is up. And like I said before, if none of that happens, it's a good chance to show you how to interact with the local authorities and such. Like I said, all you are going to be doing today is taking notes. Perfect time for one for all to settle in. That all made sense to Izuku. He couldn't imagine most villains would want to stay in the same place All Might was. So just being there would probably help the other heroes catch Stain and put an end to the horrors he had inflicted on other heroes, like Ida's brother. Izuku supposed there was only one other thing he needed to know: can I still put on my costume? Of course, young Midoriya. You'll still be acting as a hero, so you must wear it. Even if I can't see you having to use it, it's good to get your image out there for the whole world to see. Nodding, Izuku cleaned off his dishes and hurried up to his room, happy to put on his new costume again. Even if the most exciting part of the day was already over. That will be it for this part. I hope everyone enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and comment if you want part 31. If you want to hear more from me, subscribe. I hope to see you all in the next one.